So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics?
No. What are your
genetics?
Zoe, I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
No, I know. Well, but wait. To be fair, but to be fair, you're actually being kind of rude. And that's not fair.
I'm sorry, it's not rude to say that someone who's biologically a male is a male. Someone who's biologically male is a male.
But Mr. Shapiro, you knew very well that saying that to Zoe would be egregiously insulting.
It's not a matter of insulting or inflammatory.
I realize that the interview between Zoey Tur and Ben Shapiro is several years old and kind of old news, but I've been wanting to respond to it for a while. And the reason is because, well, there's several reasons. The first, most obvious, is the host in this video. When Ben Shapiro brings up chromosomes and genetics, the host wants to steer the conversation away from what is verifiable, quantifiable, measurable, and experimentally proven in favor of the so-called evidence of brain scans. And the problem with brain scans is they are not done on a blind study basis. Now, for clarity, I read, 3 to 4 different studies on brain scans, whereas the transgender mind is concerned, and far from agreeing with one another, they were all diametrically opposed to each one. Each one was diametrically opposed to the other. One study said that there's the male brain, the female brain, and then trans women have a female brain, trans men have a male brain. Another study said there's the male brain, the female brain, and the transgender brain. Another study said that there is no identifiable qualities of a transgender brain, and yet another study denied that besides almost immeasurable structural and chemical details, there was no difference between a male and female brain at all. Now, I'm not a neurologist. I don't know which one is right. But I know that, for instance, with chromosomes and genetics, you can prove your thesis on a blind study basis. For instance, if we take 100 samples of blood, such that 99 of them are men and 1 is female, any lab on the planet will be able to identify the female sample. Anyone. If they build a lab on Mars, they'll identify it in that lab too. So on any celestial body, in any blood lab on the planet, the proper professionals will be able to identify the female sample without being told which is which. Now, brain scans cannot accomplish the same thing. When they perform these brain scan studies, they go into it with an agenda. They take someone who claims to be transgender and compare their brain scans to a slew of other brain scans of people who are not transgender and try to identify the differences. This is not a blind study basis. This is a loaded experiment. And as I said before, they all had different conclusions. So this host is asserting his own agenda when he wants to move the discussion to what is verifiable, quantifiable, measurable, and experimentally provable, in favor of so-called brain scan evidence, which is none of those things, in favor of gender identity, which is absolutely unverifiable, immeasurable, unquantifiable, and experimentally unprovable. Now, the second thing I wanted to respond to is Zoey Tur, when refuted, lays Zoey Tur's hand on Ben Shapiro's shoulder and threatens him with the trip to the hospital. Now, I understand Ben Shapiro is an intellectual. He's used to heated debate, and he was kind of shocked by this suggestion. I gotta tell you, if that was me, my response would have been, wow, not very ladylike, Mr. Zoey Tur. Not very ladylike at all. So, I don't agree with you. And you get angry enough to threaten violence. I think that's what they're talking about when they bring up toxic masculinity. Now, this isn't like the reaction two cheerleaders in a disagreement on the field have, and when they exchange verbal, insults with one another. This is when two heaping quarterbacks or other positions on a football team get in a debate on the field and then, stomp each other out. Which is kind of funny because Zoey Tur itself seems kind of like a wide receiver in a skirt in that video. Not very ladylike in behavior, appearance. I don't know. I just don't see a lady when I look at Zoey Tur. That's the last thing I see. I see a football player in a skirt denying what's between its legs. Now, what happens after that is instead of the whole group, getting behind the idea that threatening violence in a political discussion is incorrect, unprofessional, and defeatist in form, they actually tell Ben Shapiro he's the one being disrespectful. Give me a break. Ben Shapiro is allowed to disagree with Zoey Tur, and even if he is being disrespectful, that is his right. He is allowed to disrespect anybody he wants. You don't get to demand my respect, and you do not get to demand that I acknowledge your delusion. And in fact, if I care about you, the last thing I should do is acknowledge your delusion. And, but no, they got behind it. They said yes. They basically justified physical threats by an angry penis-having person in a skirt because Ben Shapiro was being disrespectful, totally ignoring the fact that it's hugely disrespectful to threaten someone with violence for disagreeing with you. I mean, even if Ben Shapiro was being disrespectful, what is more disrespectful? Disagreeing with somebody in a way that they find offensive, or being offended and threatening violence over it. I don't think it's a close call at all. But like all leftist lobotomists, they just corralled around, they circled the wagons around them and said, yes, Zoey Tur has the right to threaten violence when you disagree with him and you're disrespectful. Well, I'm sorry, but let's just say Zoey Tur, whatever. No, man. I'm sorry. Not very ladylike. Pretty masculine. I just can't see it. I can't see. I know women get violent. Yeah, sure, of course. Not on the record levels men do. And I don't know any woman in my life that would immediately threaten violence because you deny their viewpoint, you deny their worldview. They don't immediately resort to threatening to send you to the hospital. That's very, very manly. Zoey Tur, if you're watching, that was manly. Then again, what do I know? I'm just some punk who cares.